Section 10.5, Dividing and Order of Operations. In this section, we will start with the rules for dividing real numbers and then move on to the order of operations, where we can use all four operations with positive and negative numbers. What about the rules for division? Since it is division, are the rules the same or are they the opposite rules? Well, let's take a look. If we had the problem negative 8 divided by 4 is equal to a question mark, we could change that to a multiplication problem. So we could say whatever the answer is times 4 would have to equal a negative 8. Well, in order for us to get an answer of a negative, if this is a positive number, that must mean that this would have to be a negative number. So negative 2 times 4 would equal negative 8. So if I put negative 2 in for my question mark back in the division problem, negative 8 divided by 4 has to equal a negative 2. So I have a negative number divided by a positive number, and I get a negative answer. So the signs were different. And when the signs are different, I end up getting a negative answer. Let's do the same thing with negative 15 divided by negative 3. I'm going to change that to a multiplication problem. So the answer times negative 3 has to equal a negative 15. Well, for the multiplication rules to work, that must mean that this answer has to be a positive 5, because a positive times a negative gives me the negative for the answer, which must mean that this is equal to 5. So I have negative 15 divided by negative 3 is equal to 5. So once again, I have two signs that are the same, and I get a positive. So the rules for division are exactly the same as the rules for multiplication. It doesn't matter whatsoever. If the signs are the same, I'm always going to get a positive number. If the signs are different, I'm always going to get a negative answer. So here's a straightforward division problem, negative 28 divided by 7. The signs are different, so I know this answer has to be a negative, and 28 divided by 7 is 4, so the answer to this problem is a negative 4. Remember, though, that when you have division, it can also be written a different way. So I could write that problem so it looks like a fraction, negative 28 divided by 7. Negative 28 divided by 7, it's still, once again, the signs are different, so I am going to get a negative 4 for the answer. But sometimes you might have problems, for instance this one, negative 5 divided by a negative 10. When I have a problem like this, it looks like a fraction, and I can do it several ways. One thing I can do is I can take a look at that fraction and say, well, that could be put in lower terms. And I could divide by 5 over 5. Now, I'm not going to worry as if it's, with the positive negatives and things like that, because I know that this answer finally, the final answer has to be a positive, because the signs are the same. So I'm really just going to ignore those negative numbers in front of it, and I am just going to divide by 5 over 5. And I'm going to get 5 halves for a problem, for the answer, I should say. Now, remember, when I do that, it's really a negative divided by a negative still, but once again, I'm not going to worry about that. I just know it's 5 halves. And I could write my answer as 5 halves, and it would be a positive 5 halves. Now, that's if the direction said you can leave it as an improper fraction. If you can't leave it as an improper fraction, you might need to change it into a mixed number. So, in order to change 5 halves into a mixed number, 5 divided by 2, 2 goes into 5 twice. I get 2 times 2 is equal to 4. I get a remainder of 1, so it would be 2 1/2. Or it could also be 2.5. It doesn't matter, depends on the directions and what you are doing with the problem, but the answer is going to be a positive at the end. One other idea to keep in mind is when you are dividing and you have a 0 either in the numerator or the denominator. In the very first problem, I have 0 divided by negative 18. Remember, if the value of the numerator is 0, that answer is 0. And I'm not going to obviously put a positive or a negative with it. The second one, I have negative 18 divided by 0. Remember, you cannot divide by 0. If the value of the denominator is equal to 0, then we say that this answer is undefined. So let's put the ideas of adding, subtracting, multiplying, dividing all together and do some problems in which then we have to consider the rules for the order of operations. So here I have negative 3, and you need to make sure that you see that this is negative 3 times, and then in parentheses, negative 2 subtract 5. Remember, if there is no sign in between, it's understood to be multiplication. So I have multiplication, and I also have something in parentheses, and I have to do what's inside the parentheses first. So I have negative 2 subtract 5. So I'm going to go through and I'm just going to recopy what I have, but I'm going to do what's inside the set of parentheses first. Since it's subtraction, I'm going to change that from subtraction to addition by adding the opposite of that second number. That second number is a 5, so I need to add a negative 5. So inside the set of parentheses, I have negative 2 plus negative 5. Now I'm going to use the rules for adding, and the rules say that if the signs are the same, I'm going to add the numbers together. 2 plus 5 is equal to 7. I'm going to use the same sign. So inside that set of parentheses, I have a negative 7. And I'm going to multiply that by a negative 3. And I'm going to put a dot there to show multiplication. So now I have a negative 3 times a negative 7. The signs are the same. When the signs are the same, I know my answer is going to be positive when I'm multiplying. So my final answer to this is a positive 21, which I would probably just write as 21. Let's look at another example. Here I have 5 plus 3 times 4 subtract 6 squared. Once again, I have to do what's inside that set of parentheses first. So I'm going to rewrite what I have. 5 plus 3. Inside that set of parentheses, I have 4 subtract 6. I'm going to change it to 4 plus a negative 6, and I want that squared. So I still have to do what's inside that set of parentheses. I'm taking a look at the 4 plus a negative 6, and I'm noticing that they have different signs. This is actually a positive, while this is a negative. So I'm going to subtract their absolute values. 6 minus 4 gives me a 2, and it's going to be a negative 2 because the higher absolute value is associated with the negative number. So now what I have is I have 5 plus 3 times that negative 2, but that negative 2 is squared. So now I need to figure out the square of that because I'm going to do exponents next. So I have negative 2 squared. Negative 2 squared means negative 2 times negative 2. The signs are the same, so I have a 4. So now I have 5 plus 3 times 4. According to the order of operation rules, I'm going to have to do my multiplication first. 3 times 4 gives me 12, and then I have 5 plus 12. My final answer to this problem is 17. Here's one more problem to practice. And if you'd like to, you could turn this off, go through the problem yourself, see what you get, and then turn it back on and see if you agree with my answer. As I'm going through and doing this problem, I might start off with the top half. And in the top half, I have to do what's inside the set of parentheses first. So I have 4 subtract negative 5. So I'm going to change that to an addition problem. So it's going to be 4 plus a positive 5 because I have to change the sign of that second number. Well, 4 plus 5 gives me 9. So now I have negative 18 divided by 9. A negative divided by a positive gives me a negative, so I know that I have a negative 2 on the top. Then I'm going to take a look at the bottom. For the bottom, I have to do once again what's inside the set of parentheses first. 2 times 3 gives me 6. So I have negative 6 plus 6. Negative 6 plus 6, I am just going to go through and I'm going to subtract those. I'm going to get 0. I'm not going to have a positive or a negative. So I have an answer of negative 2 divided by 0. Remember, anytime you divide by 0, the answer is undefined. So the final answer to this is undefined. I have mentioned many times how important this chapter is to all of your other math courses, and how the same ideas will be used when we start doing algebra in the next chapter. Please let me know how I can help. Thank you.